Hello everybody, it's Abby here again. I'm checking in with you all to see you're all doing well, hopefully. I'm going to do another reading today from this beautiful box set, which is called The Usborne History of Britain. And as I said before, it contains 8 books from different time periods throughout British history. It's beautiful, it's illustrated beautifully, simple to follow, great for kids, great for adults, great for me. So what I thought I would do is look at prehistoric Britain, which is the first book in the series. And it's got on the cover what I think is Stonehenge. It looks like Stonehenge. And obviously a picture of a skeleton of a dinosaur. And on the back of the book it says, "From the age of dinosaurs to the Roman invasion, this book tells the story of this vast and exciting period. Find out when and how people first came to Britain. Discover the secrets of making bronze and iron, and explore the mystery of Stonehenge." When I went to York a few weeks ago, I went to the Jorvik Centre, which is all about when the Vikings were in Britain, and it's fascinating. If you ever get the chance to go, I strongly recommend it. So we're going to have a little look in the book. And the first page is titled, "What is Prehistory?" The story of life in Britain goes back to a time long, long before people existed, even after they first arrived. It was many thousands of years before they began to write about anything. Prehistory is all about what happened before written records began. Archaeologists and other experts have uncovered many secrets of prehistoric Britain by examining traces of things that have survived down the ages. The remains of houses, temples, tools, and even long dead bodies have helped to build up a picture of how people first lived and what it was like before anyone was there at all. That's the page. See some cavemen and hunting with spears. So this talks about the Mesozoic era, which was 250 to 65 million years ago. Great Big Britons. Millions of years before people existed, the world was home to enormous lizard-like creatures, the dinosaurs. These were some of the oldest creatures, and certainly the biggest, ever to walk on British soil. A different world. Dinosaurs first appeared on Earth about 230 million years ago, and lorded it over all other creatures for the next 165 million years. During this time, the British Isles didn't exist as they are today. They were by turns hot, mountainous, and even, for a long time, completely underwater. All kinds of dinosaurs lived there, from lumbering giants to fierce hunters, as well as fish-like reptiles such as the Ichthyosaurus and the long-necked Plesiosaurus, and I have no idea if that's right, but feel free to tell me. And there's a artist impression here of two gigantic diplodocuses walking through the mists of Jurassic Britain. See that? And there's a small side part which says prehistoric lands. At the time of the dinosaurs, the British Isles didn't yet exist. There was only one continent, Pangaea, and the land that would become Britain was in the middle of it. Over millions of years, the land would gradually shift until the lands, islands, and oceans we know today, including the British Isles, were formed. There's a very small map there. Okay. Catastrophic collision. One fateful day, around 65 million years ago, a meteorite, a giant ball of rock, from space, hurtled into the earth, and everything changed. Earthquakes shook the land, and volcanoes erupted all over the world. Great clouds of dust and poisonous gases filled the sky. The next few thousand years were a dark and dangerous time. Trees and other plants struggled to grow, and the sea got much colder. Without food to eat, many animals starved to death. Eventually, all the dinosaurs, as well as many sea creatures and other animals, died out for good. There's a picture of the collision. First Britons. In 1824, a set of fossil bones found in Britain was identified as Megalosaurus, the first dinosaur to be named. It lived about 175 million years ago. The oldest dinosaur remains found in Britain belong to the Theodontosaurus. It lived about 210 million years ago. There's some small pictures there, if you can see them. We go into the Paleogene period, 65 to 23 million years ago. An ever-changing world. Although dinosaurs died out, many other creatures survived. These were the ancestors of animals living today. Sharks and other fish took over the sea, while birds and later mammals dominated on land. Around 50 million years ago, giant birds such as diatrema lived in Britain. They couldn't fly, but they could run fast and had huge claws. Their prey were mammals, such as small horse-like Philiohippus. By about 30 million years ago, early forms of elephants and hippos lumbered across the plains and rivers of Britain, occasionally bothered by big cats. Hot and cold. As time passed, Earth's climate underwent constant but gradual changes. Every few 100 million years it started to get very, very cold, and the whole planet entered a period known as an ice age. It was so cold that there was ice covering the north and south poles all year round. During each ice age, the climate went through gradual hot and cold cycles. Every 100,000 years or so, it grew so cold that vast ice sheets, called glaciers, extended out from the poles to cover large parts of the world, including Britain. These slow hot and cold cycles continue to affect the Earth today. New life. As the climate changed, the landscape changed. Over millions of years, many animals couldn't cope with the change and died out. But in time, new animals, including humans, began to appear. Animals of ancient Britain. After the dinosaurs, but long before people arrived, all sorts of animals roamed British soil. The diatrema was nearly twice the height of a person. And that's it there. Hyenodon was a deadly carnivore, a bit like a hyena. Motorium was an early kind of elephant. Building the British Isles. Ever since planet Earth was formed, the land that now makes up the British Isles has experienced freezing, thawing, flooding, and all sorts of changes to its landscape, coastline, and position on the Earth. 20 million years ago, the continents of the world as we know them were in roughly the same place as they are today. But the sea levels were very different, and the British Isles weren't islands. So I don't know if you can see. We're actually attached. 450,000 years ago, Britain and Ireland were connected to each other and to mainland Europe by land bridges. 400,000 years ago, a period of extreme cold known as glaciation was at its height, and much of Britain was under the ice. We go into the Paleolithic age, which was 2.5 million to 10,000 years ago. Such large time periods, aren't they? Where did people come from? Some of the earliest ancestors of humans, who looked a little like people today, appeared in Africa about 4.5 million years ago. They were ape-like animals called Australopithecus, and they walked on two legs. About 2 million years later, a new kind of early human arrived on the scene. While Australopithecus never ventured beyond Africa, these creatures, known as Homo erectus, spread out over much of the world, including prehistoric Europe. People in Britain. A small collection of man-made stone tools dating back around 750,000 years has been unearthed near the town of Packfield in Suffolk. This is the oldest evidence of human life in Britain. The early humans who left these tools behind were probably descendants of Homo erectus. Britain was home to Homo erectus for thousands of years. But about 650,000 years ago, a period of glaciation set in, and the cold drove them all away. Can't say I blame them. Coming and going. By about 520,000 years ago, the climate had warmed, the ice melted, and a new wave of early humans wandered into Britain. At that time, Britain was a warm place, with a similar climate to today's Mediterranean countries. Oh, if only it still was. But 70,000 years later, the ice began to come back. People were driven south and away from Britain. This continuous but gradual cycle of hot and cold weather meant that early humans settled in Britain, often for thousands of years, at least 8 times. Stone Age. At the time the first settlers arrived in Britain, people were making tools from stone. Prehistorians called this time the Paleolithic Age, which means Old Stone Age. And there's a map here that shows some of the places where settlers in Britain lived about 450,000 years ago. So I'm just going to try and show you that now. Okay. For much of the Paleolithic Age, a massive river cut through central Britain, now known as the River Bytham. It no longer exists. Oh, gosh. Hunters and gatherers. Early humans came to Britain following animals. People needed animals to survive. They ate their meat and used their skins for clothes. Instead of living in fixed homes, they followed herds of animals and slept in makeshift shelters or inside caves if they were handy. Many of the creatures they hunted were huge and fierce, and people only had simple tools, such as pointed wooden spears. So they chased animals into bogs or off cliffs to make killing them easier. More often than hunting, they also scavenged for animals to eat that were already dead. But the people of this age didn't only eat meat. They also caught fish and gathered shellfish, nuts, fruits and roots. To help with all these tasks, they made themselves tools from wood, bone and stone, and they twisted plant stems and leaves to make ropes. There's not a nice picture of hunters that have chased a mammoth into a bog to confuse and exhaust it, and then finished it off with wooden spears. I don't like that. First language. Early humans probably communicated to warn each other when danger was nearby, or to help each other hunt, but they may have relied on body language more than speech. Making tools. A small number of animals make simple tools, but only humans know how to make complex tools. Early people made tools from pebbles, especially flint. They also sharpened sticks into deadly spears and used bones or antlers as hammers. Hand axes. Prehistoric Britons, from about 500,000 years ago, have left behind many examples of a tool now known as a hand axe. Hand axes were made in different shapes, but were all designed with a round base that fits snugly into a hand, and with a series of sharp edges for cutting. Hand axes had many uses, but in particular they were used to scrape animal hides, slice meat, and to extract nutritious marrow from bones. At first, people simply made their own new hand axes whenever they needed one. In time, some people specialised as tool makers or flint knappers and began to make lots of hand axes to trade for food or other goods. And there's a picture here of the first hand axe, which was found at Farnham in Surrey, and it's estimated to be about 400,000 years old. Making a hand axe. Here's how archaeologists think people made hand axes. A stone was chosen for its shape, texture, and even the sound it made when tapped. A hard hammer stone was used to chip away pieces to make the basic shape. Softer stones, bones, and antlers were used to create smaller, sharp edges. There's a person making a hand axe there. New technology. As settlers came to Britain, they brought new ideas about how to make tools. From about 300,000 years ago, people in parts of Britain began to use a new technique. Instead of making a single tool out of a stone, they hit the stone to break off many small, sharp chippings. These were perfect to use as knives. Stone Age Toolkit. About 200,000 years ago, another new development spread into Britain from Europe. Flint knappers would prepare a core from a suitable stone. By hitting the core in different places, the napper chipped off flakes of different sizes and shapes. One kind of flake would become a spear tip, another might be a bone saw. This new method, which had become known as the levelus technique, meant that one stone could become a whole toolkit. The technique was used for thousands of years all over Britain and Europe. And these are some of the stone tools that were made using that technique. Making flakes. Simple flake tools were made by chipping at stone core. Flint knappers using the Levallois technique used an antler as a chisel to shape more accurate flakes. There's a little picture there. So we're going into the Middle Paleolithic Age, which was 250,000 to 30,000 years ago. All kinds of people. After the first group of Homo erectus came to Britain, at least 3 different kinds of early humans settled here. First came Homo heidelbergensis, who had much bigger brains than Erectus, made flake tools rather than hand axes, and even made wooden spears. Then, about 60,000 years ago, came Homo neanderthalensis, commonly known as Neanderthals. These humans had even bigger brains and had learned to cope with cold and snowy weather, although they also lived in warmer parts of southern Europe. Finally, from about 36,000 years ago, a new kind of human arrived, Homo sapiens. These people, who originally came from North Africa, were the ancestors of modern humans. Homo sapiens were taller and thinner than Neanderthals, and they had smaller brains, although this didn't necessarily mean they were less intelligent. Both kinds of people talked, used tools, and even knew how to build elaborate traps to capture large animals. Keeping out the cold. Neanderthals lived through at least 2 major glacial periods. Perhaps their most useful invention for surviving harsh winters was clothing. To make clothes, Neanderthals took leather hides and carefully scraped them clean. Then they heated the hides over a fire to make them softer so they could be shaped. They also used strips of leather to make belts. Homo sapiens added another vital step to clothing technology. They punched holes into animal hides and used needles made of bone and thread from thin strips of leather to sew hides together. These well-fitting clothes were much warmer than loose hides. Masters of fire. Homo erectus carefully took burning branches from wildfires to make their own fires. It may not have been until the time of the Neanderthals that people learned how to start a fire. They banged 2 rocks together to make a spark, which set light to very dry wood. There's a picture there. And there's a 12,000-year-old bone needle, which is what Homo sapiens would have used 10,000 years earlier. Okay, so you can see that. There we go. There is a Neanderthal skeleton in a grave here. Neanderthals often placed their dead in this way, with the knees tucked up in a sleeping position. I'll just show you that. There we go. Okay. Respect for the dead. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were some of the earliest people to carry out rituals, ceremonies to mark out special occasions in their lives. No one knows if they performed weddings, but they did have funerals. Neanderthals buried their dead in graves. Homo sapiens took their rituals even further. They buried precious objects in the graves of their loved ones. Where did Neanderthals go? Neanderthals disappeared from Britain around 30,000 years ago. Shortly after that, they disappeared altogether. No one knows exactly why the Neanderthals died out. Some experts think there's a rather sinister explanation, that Homo sapiens gradually killed them all. They may have killed them in combat, or perhaps they drove them off into areas where there was little food and shelter. Family tree. Today there is only one kind of human on Earth, Homo sapiens. This family tree shows the link between the early humans that are thought to have lived in Britain and where they existed. So it starts with Homo erectus, which was 1.8 million to 500,000 years ago. So there's Homo erectus. Then we go down to Homo heidelbergensis, which was 600,000 to 200,000 years ago. That's there. Then we go to Homo neanderthalanis, which was 250,000 years to 30,000 years ago. And that's there. And then we have Homo sapiens, 200,000 years ago to present day. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope you enjoyed that. Please let me know if there's anything you'd like me to look at or read, and I will carry on with this book in another video. And I really hope you will join me for that one. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you soon. Take care, my lovelies. Bye bye.